Hi, viewers, and welcome to The People's Voice. We've got a special guest on tonight, Jemima Ayoub. She's 16 years old and had a big interest in politics, history, and science. I'd like to introduce my fellow co-host over there, the Warringah warrior, Stephen Tripp. I'm Adam Zahra, Zahra from Macarthur. Woo! And then we've got Jemima over there. So, how are you guys going?
Yeah, good.
All good. Ready to go.
All right. So, Jemima, why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit to us and just tell us some of your interests and what you've been, and where you're going and your experiences at school over the past, I guess, 2 years.
Okay, that's a big one to deal with. Well, firstly, I'm 16 years old. I am an Australian patriot. I've always been quite patriotic. I love our country. I love my generation. I know it's rare to find anyone who can even tolerate us, but I can tolerate my peers, and I believe we are the future of Australia. So I believe it's my responsibility, as it is the responsibility of all other Australians, to make sure that we can have unbiased views and that our views are able to build our nation in a world that isn't a fairyland, really. With school, I have always gone to independent Christian schools, so extreme bias hasn't been an extreme issue. The problem is mostly the syllabus and the curriculum, and most definitely the textbooks. The textbooks at times are extreme left, I would say, in certain aspects, especially in the fields of history and humanities. When it comes to teachers, I have dealt with a few who are quite left-leaning and will say sarcastic remarks if you even want to give them some centrist or opposing views. That has been the minority in my experience, but yeah, generally when it comes to the school system, it would be the syllabus more than the teachers. So I believe in general, most of the problems we have in society come from the top. And I don't think it's any different with the education system. So that's the short of it.
Wow.
With the state election coming up, there's going to be a big focus on schooling, education, and especially from one nation's standpoint, with Mark Latham as our leader, we're really going to
because his bill failed, didn't it? The parental rights bill.
Yeah, but he's really going to be pushing the message of we want to provide children with an education, not indoctrination.
He's been doing a fantastic job so far. I believe he is probably the only politician who actively, like there's others who mention it, but especially New South Wales, he's the only one who actively pursues it. So it's really encouraging.
Yeah, well, that's right. And he's always talking about it because it is a very important issue, because this is the future of our nation. And if this indoctrination is taking place, then it's kind of brainwashing young people at a impressionable age. Is the indoctrination that we hear about that bad?
Well, it really depends on the school and the area the school is in. Generally, I find, this is from personal experience, not statistics, mind you. So I would find that the eastern suburbs and generally the Blue Ribbon and Till seats generally are ironically worse when it comes to the level of wokeness in the field of climate change, especially. While generally Labor seats and schools in more of the western regions, generally they are just not very motivated in their teaching, and that goes across the board when it comes to the various types of schools. Obviously, I feel that independent schools are about 10 years behind. So the kind of nonsense that went on in public schools 10 years ago has only now seeped into the independent system. Before, it was generally more neutral.
By independent systems, schools, Jemima, you mean like Catholic and Anglican and Orthodox schools?
Catholic is actually their own system. They're separate to the public sector, and they're also separate. Yeah. They're also not independent, so they have their own thing. But like Anglican, Christian, non-denominational, even like Muslim and Jewish schools, they'll all come under the independent banner. Also, the elite schools, I can't think of any on the top of my head, but like generally
Kings.
Yeah,
Sorry,
definitely
yeah.
like them. They're all independent. And with independent schools, through my personal experience, they're either totally free from the wokeness in their teaching methods, because quite a few of them teach off a classical curriculum, while the independent schools that are more elitist and generally always secular, they would be extreme woke. And I think there was an example in Queensland where they weren't only teaching their students it was okay to be a furry. So in case you haven't heard of them, a furry is a person who identifies as a dog or cat, and that is not a joke, it's an actual thing, you can look it up.
Say that again, sorry.
I'm gonna look that up. So it's identifying as a furry.
Yes, it's an actual thing. It's wild. I believe
Well, I'm
it's the
furry,
result
but
of
I don't
overdevelopment.
identify as a furball. Okay.
Right, yeah, and I can't remember its name, but an independent school in Queensland actually provided a litter box for a specific student who decided they were a furry. So
A litter
that's
box.
the example of, yes, I kid you not. I'll try to find it.
Wow.
Trippy, I think it's a lot worse than we even imagine. I
That
would
can't even imagine that.
I would never have thought that something like that would be a thing.
Jemima just told us that. I'm trying to imagine it. I can't imagine. Not only that, don't you think that's mentally destructive for that student? You know, I remember.
Well, it has to be. Like, no teenager likes themselves. It's very rare, unless if they're extremely narcissistic. So obviously you're going to want to stand out somehow. And traditionally you'll get a poor choice of piercing or a wild hair color or a stupid haircut, and all that can be reversed. But now they're doing things that will literally impact their life.
You're exactly right. I remember when I was at high school, there was a guy. He came to the school from another school. I think his school closed down, and he just didn't. He wasn't accepted straight away. So what happened was he found it tough for a few weeks, and then he kind of got a bit of attention by spraying aerosols on himself and then lighting it. So he kind of lighted and the flame, it wouldn't hurt him or anything like that, but he had to go to that extreme to kind of be accepted. And eventually that wore off, and again he wasn't accepted because people lost interest in it.
It's just a bit creepy.
Yeah, but sometimes sometimes kids do that sort of thing to kind of fit in with the crowd, and that they might come out and say, yeah, I'm a furry, I need a litter box to get attention. But the school shouldn't be facilitating this to egg them on and encourage them, because at the end of the day, it's still pushing them further out from the rest of the group. Where, I mean, I don't. It's
really the hate me now or hate me later type logic, and most schools and government organisations have chosen the hate me later. And in 10 years, you're going to have a very distraught society who've been fed all this nonsense.
I've got to ask a question. Was the litter box set up in the classroom?
I really don't know. It was There's an article by the Courier Mail if you want to.
Well, it's better than taking, what do you call it? Puberty
blockers.
Yeah, puberty blocking chemicals. I mean,
if you read the ingredients in them, they are most definitely not reversible. And I don't think that's even scientifically controversial. I highly doubt you'll be able to find a single peer-reviewed paper which genuinely argues that they are reversible, because they're not. It's a fact of reality that if you mess up with your body, even if you take like other hormone-enhancing supplements when you're younger, it will never be reversed. Whatever you've taken will always have lasting damage. So telling people that it's a magic potion that will save all their woes isn't just cruel. I would say borderline's ignorantly evil. Or in some cases, not so ignorantly.
Absolutely.
When I was at school, one of the worst things I ever got told by a teacher was that communism worked in theory but not in practice, which is wrong as well. It doesn't work in theory to me either. But what's some of the things that you get told by your teachers that really stick out in your mind as
The most out there one was my history teacher told me that, this is an old history teacher, mind you, my current one is fantastic, but an older history teacher a few years ago told me that 5 million children were taken during the stolen generation. And when I asked him how that could be, he told me to not be bigoted, which is quite ironic because there weren't even 5 million Aboriginals alive in 1788. So essentially he was way off even by their standards. So if he was having a go at my argument that possibly the numbers have been inflated, fair enough. But he got his statistics wrong too. That's probably the most wild thing. And that was an interesting 20 minutes of class discussion. But yeah, that's probably the most wild. Recently, probably everything in all subjects comes down to climate change. I can't think of a single wild example, but I think the general topic is just extreme. Like math, English, science, history, even art, everything comes down to climate change. Well, at least at my school, I feel that's the case. Some teachers don't. It's mostly the textbooks. It's the textbooks more than anything because it's the textbooks that mention it, and all the teachers who mention it are mentioning it directly out of the textbooks.
Why do they need to mention climate change in mathematics? Because last time
I have no idea.
+2
I can't answer that. It was irrelevant.
Yeah, it's just completely irrelevant. Like, I don't understand how climate change, unless if you've got, how much, what is the percentage of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and you go 0.04%, and they go, well, yes, that's very good. Like, that's the right answer. But I just don't understand.
It's still irrelevant to math. That would be more of a science question, don't you think?
Well, exactly right. Well, you're right. I mean, it's true. It's like I wasn't very good at maths. I've got to be honest with you.
I dropped it altogether. It's the worst subject on earth.
Well, especially
the teachers don't even know what they're going on about for math.
Well, that's funnily enough because Mr. Latham's also mentioned that a lot of the teachers actually currently teaching have no physical training or no proper specialized training in the fields that they're teaching. And have you noticed this in your own experience? Like the teachers are getting worse?
In my school, not exactly, but in public schools and speaking to my peers that go to public schools, some have literally told me that their history teacher was trained in math and that their math teacher was trained in English. Now, I don't know about you, but in my experience, you're generally good at STEMs or English and humanities, hardly ever both. So if the teacher was trained in a humanities or English subject and they're teaching math, it's highly unlikely that they're even good at math while in school, less now that they're out of school and in the workforce. And the same will go the other way around too. So if it's a STEM subject and they've been trained in humanities, it just reverses itself. And the teachers if the teachers don't know, like I've had teachers tell me that they find certain modules in the course boring, which is quite odd considering they keep going on about how bad our attitudes are, which is quite hypocritical if you ask me, but irrelevant to the point. If a teacher doesn't like a subject, if a teacher doesn't know a subject, it's unlikely their students will enjoy it. And if you don't enjoy something, you're not going to do it in your spare time. Like, I don't know a single person who does math in their spare time, but I know plenty who would go to the library and get a ton of history books and just sit there reading them.
Yeah.
Let's just go back to the woke ideology. Can you give us some examples? Because this stuff wasn't around when a lot of us were in school and people older than us were in school. So it's really hard for us to comprehend, when we hear things about gender fluidity and critical race theory and those sorts of things.
Gender identity theory.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that sort of thing?
Okay, so my school, to their credit, has never taught gender identity theory. That is something that other schools have taught. That is something I have done personal research about because I want to know what my peers are learning about. A good place to start, ironically, in the curriculum is I don't know if it will be considered a resource, but it's definitely a website paid for by the New South Wales government called The Good Society. You can look it up. So essentially, it's a bunch of videos and teacher resources that were created to endorse the notion of respect and consent in relationships, which sounds like a good thing. But if you watch some of the things, especially, so they break it down into categories, as in K to 2, then year 3 to 6, year 6 to 9, and year 9 to 12 from memory. And if you look at the things they're teaching year 3 to 6 students, it's not about respect. It's literally about identity and the love for oneself. So I remember watching one of the videos. Mind you, every single animated character is supposedly gender fluid. You cannot discern a gender whatsoever if you want to look at it that way.
Means? Like from what you've been taught?
Yeah.
Gender fluidity is like you don't have a gender, or it can change from day to day. And
so the core theory of gender identity theory is that biological sex and gender are separate from each other. So obviously, and now they're even trying to blur that line, but that's the foundation of the theory, which was, I'd say, first popularized about 10 years ago. So that's saying that your biological sex is your chromosome, so whether you have 2X or 1X and 1Y, and then your gender is your social expression. So that's when they took away male and female from gender. And mind you, even now, most people who believe in it will still say it's a theory, and that there's counter arguments. And then the expressed gender is called masculinity or femininity. And that could be different to your biological sex, and that could change on a daily basis because it's constructed by society. Now, the problem with that is, although it supposedly is constructed by society, they say it's so distinct from each other that to change, you need irreversible surgeries and hormone treatments. So it's kind of an own goal. But that's the basis of the theory.
Well, yeah, if you have a biological sex and then you have this, kind of like how you feel type thing, why do you need to introduce hormones and things like that? It just comes down to feeling.
Essentially, yes, because that's not changing your biological sex. It's not. No one's going to argue that. Your chromosomes stay the same your whole life.
Is there any of the students at your school that identify as transgender, or?
There is a couple who identify as gender neutral. At my school, there's a strict no cross-dressing policy. They do enforce that, but we're also not allowed to. We're not allowed to use, like, for example, in the case of Caitlyn Jenner, you're not allowed to call him Bruce Jenner or use the pronouns him or he, because that's considered intentionally cruel. So.
And can you just explain gender neutral for people that don't know what that is?
Okay, so a gender neutral person is essentially somebody who believes they're in the middle of gender fluidity, which is the theory that you're neither male or female, and that's where you got the theory of the other 7,960 whatever genders. I just came up with that number because I change it every day.
All the letters of the alphabet.
Oh, yeah. Apparently the plus in their acronym actually stands for 39 other letters. I can't even think of what they mean. I'm pretty sure in the term queer, which just means somebody who doesn't believe they have a natural gender.
How do you go? My question is, if you're a hardcore believer, not us, but if you're a hardcore believer in not having any sort of gender, so you're non-binary, whatever, you're just a blank piece of paper.
The people who put X on their licenses.
Yeah, what happens when, for argument's sake, you have a lump somewhere that's only a male person would have?
So I don't know if you know about this, but the NSH in the UK, they most definitely want to introduce it in Australia, especially with the new government. But the NSH in the UK has actually taken all gendered language out of all medical journals that they publish. So essentially, there's no longer women who give birth or men who, I don't know, whatever, men
Have
who
certain
get
type of cancers and
certain
things like
types
that.
of
Yeah, have certain
cancers.
kind of
So-
cancers that women don't happen to have the opportunity to get.
Yeah,
Which
so
is a good
essentially
thing.
they no longer say male or female. It's non-existent. They use person or, yeah. In the case of pregnancy, they changed the word from pregnant woman to birthing person, which I think is quite derogatory to the female gender. And generally people who
100%.
sit on the left of politics claim to be pro-women's rights, but they wouldn't mind our whole being reduced to being birthing people.
Yeah, I don't see. I feel like it's just gone backwards. It's actually more discriminatory to be on the left side of the table now.
And how
It's
does this
always
relate
been
to
that way.
schooling? Like, is this coming into the school from outside forces, or is this being actually taught?
Well, with the gender neutral theory, it is in textbooks. Not all
Which
textbooks,
class
though.
is this?
Pardon?
Like,
Well,
which subject is this being taught?
That will
in?
be PDHPE,
Which is personal health and development and physical education.
essentially, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
And do all students take that class? Because I know when I was at school, that was
It
more of a
is-
selective.
Currently, it is mandatory. So that's what Mark Latham's bill would have banned. Well, at least it would have given parents consent. So that means before students take that class, a parent will be sent home a form. It wasn't actually banning the class. It was actually saying that parents, like when you go on an excursion, you have, even if you're like just going somewhere local, your parents have to sign a form saying that's where you're going. They give their consent for you to go and experience whatever the excursion involves. But if they're being taught about gender neutral theories, even as young as year 6, like that's quite impressionable. They are not given any notification. They're not even informed, let alone being asked to get their permission. So
No,
that bill didn't
I
pass in New South Wales. So yeah, that is
I think
happening
about how
too.
naive I was at your age, let alone year 6 or earlier. Like, there was so much I didn't know, and I
When
think
I was in
rightfully
year
so.
6, all I was thinking was the fight we had at lunch over our favourite
Yeah.
colour or something, and
Or
that's
what
how it should
cartoon
be.
you want to watch or something like that. That's all I was. That's all I cared about when I was young. Cartoons and
I still think about what cartoons I want to watch. I remember when I was in year 6, one of my friends at the time, Dominic, his name was, I didn't say his last name, but Dominic, he had the coolest transformer, and I'm like, man, I want that transformer.
I
Right,
bet
and
you've
that's
got it.
basic. I no, I'm trying to get it though, I'm working my way there. The Legacy series I think is going to bring it out, so I'm keeping my eyes peeled. But just on a serious note, that was really all we ever thought about. Like, I don't remember ever looking at myself going, "Hey, I'm going to be a girl." Like, it was just
Yeah.
I don't remember. And obesity at school was hardly existent back in the day. I think I'm the oldest one here, obviously. So we had maybe 2 or 3 children out of a whole school that would have been overweight, and we had one disabled person who was in a wheelchair out of 2,000 children.
Yeah.
Like, it's, but now
that's actually quite. Yeah, has it changed that much?
honestly,
I think it's something like a third now.
Yeah, because there was only literally, you could count it on you.
Disabled.
A third obese or disabled, did you say?
Yeah.
Not disabled, obese.
Oh,
Obese.
okay.
No, honestly, you could have counted the obese kids on your hand, right? And we didn't have anything like, the ADHD and ADHs and all that kind of stuff. There were a couple of kids that were a bit
It's called
naughty.
childhood. ADD
Yeah,
is childhood. Everyone's hyperactive as a kid.
Well, I mean, we were pretty. I got to be honest with you. Like, I've always gone to Catholic schools. I'm Catholic myself, so. But our school, we had like 2,000 kids. a couple of chubby ones. No one, and you know the thing is too, like everyone was so accepting already anyway. We didn't have to run classes to say this, that, the other. If that you would pick out people's traits if you wanted to, if you were having like a little bit of an argument with them. If they stole your pencil, you'd go, hey, give it back to me, whatever you might say, depending on what they look like or something like that. But it was never ever. I don't ever remember it being like aggressive or horrible. Whereas I've got children now that go to school, and some of the stuff they come back and say, "Oh, this person said this and that," and you're just like, "Wow, blows my mind."
Yeah, and I personally believe that's because we have been divided by the left, who decide they have to label everyone as something. You can no longer be human. You have to decide to divide you by gender, race, skin tone, appearance. There's nothing they don't want to divide you over, because what they do is, it's a very clever way of, if you want to be a horrible person and divide and discriminate against people, they've sure have chosen a clever way to do it, because what they've done is they come up with identities and say people are marginalized, and they say it to the point in which you can't, like, if now with gender quotas, for example, if a woman gets a high ranking job, you can no longer see it as, wow, she worked hard, she got that job, because of the amount of gender quotas and the various companies who are known to use them. It's you no longer look at her as an individual who received a job. She's now a woman who received a certain position, and it does divide people. Same with
it's exactly right, because you've kind of now that you've given people a label, then you can divide them by giving them that label.
Yeah,
it's divide and conquer. That's what
and they're very successful.
The Americans went in. Oh, sorry, the Spanish went into South America with 50,000 troops and were able to take over the whole continent, because they would get into the tribes and play them off against each other. It's the same thing. If you're distracted by race and sexuality and all these things, you're not focusing on what's really happening. The real power structure, taking advantage of all of us. And look, the thing that infuriates me is you go down to Coogee Beach or you go down to Manly Beach, and people are mixing with each other, and they're happy. They've got no problems, no issues, but we're just completely pounded with this race stuff, treaty stuff, all this gender fluidity things, and it's really just designed to confuse us and divide us, which is something we need to resist. So
100%.
How do you think, so obviously the left is heavily in the schools and things like that. How does the alternative, whether it be the right or the center or whatever, approach your generation and really get our message across, or combat things?
How do we combat it?
So the first thing, I am actually one of those people who don't really cut slack for anyone. I will beat up conservatives just as hard as I'll beat up lefties when it comes to certain issues. And I believe conservatives actually have the same issues in certain aspects as people of the left, because they're unwilling to kind of move away. Some are very stubborn in their beliefs. So a good example will be social media. There'll be some conservatives out there who are totally against it. I would actually support them to a certain extent. I'm on most platforms, but it really is a waste of time, and it's definitely not great for your well-being at all. But because they despise it so much, they refuse to use it and adapt to it. So they've actually missed a whole demographic of people just because they're refusing to adapt to a new technology. And the same could go in other senses, as in, for example, most young conservatives, whether we like it or not, do believe that transgenderism is valid. If conservatives are going to, instead of arguing it from a moral, ethical, and empirical point of view, just taunt their opposition through jokes, they're not going to get through.
No.
So I'd say those are the two things that I personally see making most conservatives fail in the view of younger people.
So
we had Yvette Peterson on from Stand Up and Vote, and she said,
I heard that one.
we have to be where the young people are, and she suggested TikTok. Now I've never used TikTok. I
will never be on TikTok for security reasons, but she is right.
So TikTok's a platform that we definitely need to be on. Is there any others that are emerging? Because I think Facebook is dying.
Facebook is long gone. I'm on it, but in reality, the biggest demographic of people on Facebook would be older than 40, 50.
There we go.
The regulars.
It's the only one I know how to use, okay? Don't blame me. Tell them to make the platforms more simple. I just can't understand it. I can't even understand Insta.
So the biggest ones really are Instagram, TikTok if you must, and definitely Twitter, ironically. More and more young people are getting on Twitter, especially after Elon Musk has cracked down on the bots.
Yeah.
Okay.
No matter how left-wing someone is, I believe, ironically, it is the school system that's ingrained in us that our right to the freedom of speech is important. So I would say most Generation Z people, so Gen Z, which will be me up until people in their mid-20s roughly, and it ends with the current 10, 11-year-olds, we generally like at least knowing we have the freedom of speech. So the majority of people in our generation would actually be quite supportive of Elon Musk in removing suspensions for non-violent tweets. So that's a bit of irony for you.
The problem is that they're defining violence as not violent. It's not even violent. Well, violence, what I grew up with to understand as violence, is physically hurting somebody.
Yeah, or at least threatening to physically hurt them. It's not name-calling them. Name-calling someone is cruel, but it says more about you than them. So
I'm an 80s kid. Violence was literally physically hitting somebody. If we mouthed off at somebody, that was just like, what was he on about? That wasn't even that. You wouldn't even call that physical. You wouldn't even call that basically abuse.
Well, remember when we were like in the 90s, like the mid to late 90s, you know, it was all Jerry Springer and, you know, WWE wrestling.
Ricky Lake.
Yeah, Ricky Lake. And it was all about offending people as hard
as you could.
Like, you know, Rodney Rude was one of my favorite comedians. Like, he used to say, if you're going to get offended, that you better get out now because I'm going to offend everyone. Whereas now it's
no cancel culture. No cancel.
You can get offended over anything now. You can just invent offense.
Exactly.
You can literally look at anything. You can get offended by a color at the rate we're going.
That's why it's so dangerous, because it's like climate change. You can adapt it to anything. You know,
statistics are the most malleable product anyone uses in their arguments. So if they want to just invent a statistic of any form, they can make it fit into any narrative, and that's what they do with both supposed hate speech. And,
well, think about these. Is it critical race theory where they say even if a white person is being nice to you, they're only being nice to you because they feel guilty, and all this.
Well, that's white privilege, which is under critical race theory. Critical race theory is the most insane theory in the school system and in society in general. It is, it makes literally no sense.
So we've talked about some of the things you're being exposed to. Is there any things that you think that you're not being taught that you need to be taught?
Well, I personally have a strong belief in the classical school curriculum, and that has long been gone. Some independent schools still use it. Credit to them. The public system, it literally doesn't exist. So classical school curriculum is where you're essentially taught how to think, not what to think. So that's where essentially, if you're using a classical curriculum, you should not be referencing someone's opinion in any essay. If it's opinion, it should be based on yourself, and all references should be drawn to empirical evidence.
Right.
I believe that's what we're missing most, because it's now been replaced with, here's your opinion. You reference the opinion, and then if you really want to, you can make a judgment on somebody else's opinion. Should hopefully, according to most markers, fit in that person's opinion. So if you twist essay questions, you can make them wonderful.
So you can get full marks for that. So you could get full marks just for doing an opinion piece.
Essentially, yes. if you word it right, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
some teachers literally deduct marks for you not referencing other people's opinions.
Because I was going to say, and what Trippy was just about to say or talking about, is that I remember when the press used to have to be factually based. They had to state if it was an opinion piece.
Well, you could tell, like, I remember listening to Laurie Oakes, you know, you could kind of tell that he was on the side of Labor, but he would still put forward the Liberal point of view, and you'd still get both sides of the argument. And it wasn't like turning on Sky News now and it's completely pro-Liberal, or you listen to the ABC and it's completely pro-Greens and Labor or whatever. Or American media's, you know, clear-cut, CNN's, you know, Democrats, Fox News, you know. It wasn't like that. Like, you used to get, there wasn't as many channels, but you did get a balance, so you could at least, you know, make an informed decision on who you liked the most. Was it either Kim Beazley or was it John Howard, for example? So
yeah, that's long gone. I doubt there's a single channel still like that.
Not on the mainstream, at least.
Not on mainstream.
Even if you look at internet websites, there's actually you might be interested in looking for it, but it's an app called Grounds News. It's very interesting. So what they do is they have all the channels. It's all connected to the one app, and it actually labels them per article by bias. So let's say there's an article about the G7 summit, like that was a few weeks ago, I think. I saw an article on it, and they'd have like 50 news sites mention it, and they'd actually have a scale of where the bias lies. And it's amazing how few news sites ever make it to the centrist category. They're always on the right or left. It's never, here's your information, now it's your turn to choose.
It goes back to divide and conquer, you know, left versus right. You know, you got your little echo chamber, and you don't, you know, you think the other side's evil, you know, all the right people are destroying the world by emitting, you know, coal, you know, using coal and wanting to do that, and then the right are thinking that the left are evil by having renewables and things like that. Whereas maybe the answer is somewhere in between.
There's no more rational debate.
No. And I encourage it, because if you have a debate with someone that you completely disagree with, if you're able to at least listen to their argument and obviously argue against it, they might influence you like 5% or just a little bit, and it will change your perspective just by that little bit. But that little bit brings everyone closer together, and that's what needs to happen. And that's why our system of government is set up like it is.
Because they don't want debate.
They don't want it. Yeah. No, not at all.
I just would like to take you back just to the curriculum just for a second. And there's been a little bit of, I've heard a lot of talk and discussion about that, like, you know, like in history, and like, well, with history, like they're kind of talking badly about Australian history, like from when, you know, Captain Cook settled, and then they're trying to say that, you know, that that the white settlers were completely evil against the indigenous population.
They literally, with that one, so some subjects they try to hide the bias. History, the textbooks are full on. There was no such thing as colonialism. It is most definitely invasion. There is literally no argument provided. So occasionally, like with science and whatever, they'll at least mention within the textbook somewhere that there are people who oppose the notion of banning coal in the face of the apparent climate crisis. But with history, there is no, but some people believe in that it was colonialism and that it was a legitimate takeover, or that there's some good out of it. It's always Australia is this evil, monstrous country, and there is no balance whatsoever, which I
So
think
they
is
don't-
quite disappointing, because if you can't love your country, then what's going to unite you? Like, if your political views are worlds apart, at least you have being Australian in common.
Well, the point is, we all come together under our flag, and we have patriotism in our country because we know that it could be great, or is great, and can be better. We like having pride isn't about saying that you were perfect through history, but you have
It's
to
about
also
saying
take
that-
into account where we've come.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it would be just as bad if they want to argue nothing went wrong during colonialism. Like, to be fair, even if you're going to look at it from the convicts' points of view, where's the human rights in sending a child to the other side of the world for stealing a sack of potatoes? It's not like they're fantastic on the human rights front in any
For
aspect.
white people
really.
or Indigenous people in general.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
it's not
And
civil.
do you
to
ever
ship
learn
people-
about? Sorry, do you ever learn about, like, sometimes like some of the atrocities that Indigenous people perform, like actually incurred onto the white settler?
No, that is not part of the curriculum. If you want to know about that, it's called personal research. That is
Have you
not,
ever learned-
it's
Did
not
you ever
even a
learn-
possibility in the curriculum.
So I just got one more. I'm sorry, I'm just banging on this because I just a little bit of this.
It's one of my passionate
have-
points, so you can go on.
All right. Have you ever been taught through school that Indigenous women weren't allowed to play the didgeridoo?
Yes, I was taught that, and I actually remember having a class, initiating a class discussion, I think when I was in year 5 or 6, and I had a full argument about it with one of my teachers, because I had done a bit of research, and supposedly they were allowed to play, just not publicly. So...
Oh, really? Because I heard they weren't allowed to play it because they believed that the women would fall pregnant from playing it.
No, the excuse we were given is that they'll lose their voice, and I thought that sounds a bit off. So, yeah, I remember looking that one up when I was younger.
I learned that would have been from around about year 7 or 8 in probably in religion, when we started learning about different, like, little bits of different religions and different
Oh, really?
yeah, because then we had the Aboriginal Dream Time.
I just thought that was under history.
Well, so I learned little bit about that in religion, because we that was defined as their religion back then. I have no idea if
I
Dream
think,
Time is their
it would be
religion
fair
or
to
not.
say dreaming is part of their religion, at least.
Yeah. All right. That's
So,
cool.
we're going to put you on the spot now, Jemima.
Yeah, sure.
We're gonna test how you've been educated, and obviously you've done your own research and things like that. So this might get muddled up. I'm going to ask you some quick questions. We'll see if you can answer them.
I've done
and
a
then
lot of
if you
personal
can't,
research, so I don't know if we'll muddle it.
if you can't answer it, then we're going to put it to Adam and see if Adam can answer.
Oh, don't put it to me. Come on.
Bring it on.
Now, see, all right, you're going to ask the questions, but I've only got one question for you, and I'm going to ask it after Stephen does his one.
Then
Go on,
put me on the
Stephen.
spot. We'll start off with a maths question. What's 7 times 8?
56.
Very good. Who is Sir John Monash?
He's the guy Monash University is named after. Oh, who was he? Was he the governor of Victoria?
No,
I can't
wrong.
give you a year.
Adam?
And the worst thing about this is I know who this is because I've spoken about it with Stephen, and now I cannot remember. I thought that there was an institution named after him. Damn. Who was he, Trippy?
He is one of the most successful generals of World War One, and he was an Australian.
That's right.
Yeah.
He's on the $100
Now it
bill.
rings a bell.
Yeah. What does the name Parramatta mean?
It's an Indigenous word. Oh. Doesn't it mean Lake of Eels or something about
Yes.
eels?
That's why it's the Parramatta Eels.
Parramatta Eels. Cool.
Very good.
Hey,
What do the
Trippy.
rats? Huh?
Okay, go. Sorry. I was going to say, I'm going to ask you a question. What does Maloo mean?
Hold on, something's. Let me just. I'm getting. What does? Say that again.
Maloo.
Sorry.
What does Maloo mean? Maloo.
I have no idea.
Well, I believe it's Aboriginal for thunder.
Thunder.
There's actually like over 200 Aboriginal languages. So.
Yeah, that's the thing. How do they combine the
Well,
languages?
Holden's named their utes after them, okay? And they're pretty awesome utes,
Okay.
so I just thought that. That's the only reason why I know.
What do the rats of Tobruk refer to?
That was the Ballatin of Australian soldiers in somewhere in the Middle East during World War II, I think.
And do you know what they did?
I know they were there when the Singapore strategy fell, but I'm pretty sure they were fighting Mussolini in North Africa.
Okay.
But I don't exactly know what their purpose was. I can't remember.
Adam, you want to have a crack at the rats of Tobruk?
Nope.
Come on, bro.
Oh, bro, man.
I'm going to have to take
on.
you down to the War Memorial or something. You don't know who
I'm gonna
John
have to
Monash
go.
is. You don't know who the rats of Tobruk are.
The problem is, my brain doesn't work that way. So, I hold different information. Anyway, keep going. We got one more. She's Jemima, you're doing very well. I can tell you that.
Yeah,
I've
you're
already
doing
given
very
you 3 A's.
Name as many ships from the First Fleet that you can. I wouldn't be able to do this either. But,
The Endeavour?
no, the First Fleet.
The Endeavour? Like, isn't that the Endeavour SS?
The Endeavour was Captain Cook's ship, and he
Yeah,
discovered
but wasn't it
Australia.
part of the First Fleet?
No, the First Fleet came later. So basically, the First Fleet was Captain Cook came in 17. I'm going to get this wrong now. 1770, and then in 1788, the British returned with the colony with all the the convicts and everything to establish a settlement.
So they didn't bring the Endeavour back in 1788.
No, the Endeavour's not one of them. Adam.
Oh.
I know that as soon as you say them, I'm gonna go like that's right, that's right, and that's right. But I don't know. It wasn't the I'm gonna just no, I don't know. I'm not gonna lie.
You had the HMS Sirius, the HMS.
I am.
Yeah, all these you're gonna if you catch the ferry, you're gonna recognize some of these: the Alexander, the Charlotte, the Friendship, the Lady Penryn, Prince of Wales, Scarborough, Golden Grove, Fishburne, and the Borrowdale.
Wow.
Now I remember them. I just couldn't think.
Now you're.
Yeah. It triggered the memory.
Couple more. List. Sorry, not list. Give me the names of 3 Australian prime ministers pre-World War II.
Edmund Barton.
Yep.
He was the first. Alfred Deakin.
Very good.
And let's think of a third. What? I think Billy Hughes was just before.
Yep. No, he's in there. Yep.
That's
3. Very good, Adam. Come on. Can you name one more?
Harold Holt.
Harold Holt was after
because he did the bolt like Harry Holt, right?
All right, that's enough for today.
I can tell you that the 1980s school education system has failed me in that quiz, but not really, because I've got to be honest with you. I've done I would have done all those assignments and things like that back in the day. I remember doing them. I just can't remember them right now. Too many hits to the head.
I don't think we've touched the First Fleet since like year 5. I don't know if it was the same back then, but
I don't think it's critical knowing them. I just thought it would be a cool question. But
no.
I've got one more question. Who were Burke and Wills?
Burke and Wills. I have a feeling like this is something I should know, but it's too late for my brain to work in a way in which I'll be able to give an actual answer.
Trippy. I can see you on 2 screens.
Sorry, wait, weren't they the ones who went from, I can't remember where, maybe Melbourne across the outback, and then like they refused to refill their carts or something, and then like 11 of them got bogged down because they brought too much sugar or something like that.
She's looking it up on Google.
No, so they were explorers that crossed the Great Dividing Range.
Oh, that's kind of there.
Yeah, you were kind of there. You would have gotten a B plus, and then a participation award, because that's just
participation awards are the worst.
ideal is.
They're like saying that you failed but not bad enough to be reprimanded.
That's the wokest. That's just so woke. A participation award.
Oh,
yeah. No, that's all. That was good. Yeah, they're very, very good. Yeah. I mean, wow. Your knowledge is very, very, very good for everything that we. Oh no, I'm just saying.
I credit it to lockdown because I had nothing better to do other than to read up about random things.
Oh, I watch TV.
No, it doesn't interest me, ironically.
No, fair enough.
I don't think there's anything I regularly watch, except for a bit of Sky News here and there.
No, that's fair enough. So, Trippy, have you got any other questions for Jemima?
No, I'm done. We've gone half an hour over than what I expected. So,
yeah, Jemima, Jemima, just have you got anything else to add? Is there any? Do you have any other? Do you have a closing kind of like?
Well, yeah, I just want to thank both of you. I want to thank both of you for standing up for Australia and for your communities, and for at least being willing to put your name and privacy out there to have at least attempt to have a say in our future. So it's really honourable. Lots of people think it's easy to be a candidate, but it most definitely isn't. Even on a privacy aspect, there'll be people, I'm sure, who won't be very impressed with your stand. And yeah, I just want to thank you for putting your hands up and for completing initiatives like this to continue your cause. And I wish you all the best of luck if you were to recontest in the state election. Not that I'm dropping any hints or anything, but yeah, thank you.
Well, Stephen, I'd like to say thank you. And Jemima, I'd like to say thank you even more.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was really fun.
And yeah, thank you very much for coming on. It's been great. And I hope that we'll be able to get you on maybe again in the future.
Oh, I'd love that. Just
awesome. That was awesome, Jemima. Yeah. Thank you very much. And I think it's important for us not to just have policies, that obviously we're putting policies forward and stuff, but we also need to speak to, I guess, the horse's mouth and see what's actually happening on the front line. So there's a lot of stuff that gets thrown around in politics, a whole bunch of different views and things like that. But sometimes you actually need to go to the actual front line and see what actually is happening. So thank you.
Yeah, because it's all theory until you can actually prove it.
Exactly. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.